20 years ago, on January 6th, the Boston Globe began its devastating series of reports on what became the clergy sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. How much progress has been made by the Catholic Church in the U.S. to address this scandal? Here with his thoughts and analysis is President of the Catholic League and author of the book, The Truth About Clergy Sex Abuse, Clarifying the Facts and Causes, Dr. Bill Donohue. Happy New Year, Bill. Before we get to this 20th anniversary of the sex abuse crisis, I want to get your take on some other stories this week. On Wednesday at his audience, the Pope spoke about what he termed a demographic winter, when couples choose not to have children. He said, we see that people do not want to have children or just want one or no more, and many, many couples do not have children because they do not want to or have just one, but they have two dogs, two cats. Yes, dogs and cats take the place of children. Yes, it's funny, I understand, but it is the reality. And this denial of fatherhood or motherhood diminishes us. It takes away our humanity. Now, Bill, as you've seen, the media is having a field day with this. What's your reaction as a sociologist? There's a lot of outrage over Francis showing disrespect, in quotes, for pets and pet parents.
No, what the Pope said is absolutely right. As a matter of fact, he's more right than he realizes. That's true, by the way, in Japan, not just simply in the United States and in Europe. So there is a phenomenon that's going on here. As far as I see it as a sociologist, it's born of basically one thing: narcissism. A lot of young people today, they don't want to deal with the burdens of children. They'd rather have a dog that loves him. And a lot of it is driven by that. Yeah, I mean, I understand children can be expensive and they can be burdensome. I have two of my own and I love them dearly. But the idea, and it's great to have pets. I'm all in favor of that too. But the idea of having a kind of a substitute for children, which the Pope is absolutely right about, that's something which culturally is very troubling. It's what happens when secularism becomes the dominant strain in the society.
Yeah, well, Bill, I always say, look, I love pets too, but if I have to choose spending that much time walking something and changing it and taking it to the doctor, I'd rather have a child so they can one day wash me, take me to the doctor. You know, I hate to be greedy here, but anyway, Jesuit Father Pat Conroy is making news in the Washington Post this week. Conroy is the former chaplain of the House of Representatives. In an interview, Father Conroy drew a distinction between pro-choice and pro-abortion Catholics, saying that a pro-choice Democrat is not a pro-abortion Democrat, and then he calls choice a Catholic value. What did you think when you first read this, Bill?
Well, choice is a verb, and it has no moral meaning. We have to know what the object is. The choice to do what? A knife in the hands of a surgeon can make a sick person better. In the hands of a thug, he'll take you out. I want to know what the choice is about. If the choice is slavery, then we should be opposed to it. I don't want to encourage more of those kinds of choices. I want less of them. And the same is true of abortion. No, basically, Father Conroy is pro-abortion. Now, he would insist he's pro-choice. That's fine. He can say whatever he wants. We know what side he comes down on. And, yeah, for a Jesuit priest to be so bold as to come out and say it is rather astonishing. But, the same arguments were, in fact, made when we had, back in the mid-19th century, when slavery was legal. And people said, you should impose your choice on me. Actually, Father Conroy went further than that. He said that we shouldn't be against or no one should be against taking away the choice of anybody. Everybody wants choices. Well, does he read the newspapers? Does he know what's going on at Princeton and at Yale, where you can't leave the perimeter? That they will get you if you go into New Haven, go out for a slice of pizza because they're worried you might get the sniffles of a new flu. The lockdowns are all over the place, and lots of people, particularly in blue states, they love lockdowns. So choice is not something that even Americans like anymore. It depends what it is. The choice to put drugs into your body, they like. The drugs to kill your kid, they like as well.
And Father Thomas Reese, another Jesuit, and others have tried to muddy these moral waters for political advantage in the past, Bill. And your great friend, Cardinal O'Connor, John O'Connor in New York, had to smack him down when he tried to pull the same routine.
Well, that's true. And I also don't like it when Father Conroy misrepresents Thomas Aquinas by saying that, oh, your conscience is all that matters. Well, as I've mentioned many times before, Jeffrey Dahmer had a conscience. So did Hitler. So did Stalin. Everybody has a conscience. The question is it a well-formed conscience? And Aquinas did say that the truth was in the Catholic Church. That was the work of the Holy Spirit. And you don't have a right to override that. So when you misrepresent Aquinas to make your pitch for pro-abortion, no, there are people in this country, by the way, who do like abortion. As I pointed out in my statement about this, people walk around with signs saying abortion is a blessing. I like women who have had an abortion. So it's not true that everybody who votes for a pro-choice candidate, so to speak, is against abortion, really. No, a lot of them really do like it.
Bill, on December 27th, the New York State Department of Health determined that certain risk factors must be present for a patient to receive new anti-COVID treatments. One of those risk factors is being, quote, non-white race or Hispanic Latino ethnicity. Now, as a lifelong New Yorker who is none of those things, Bill, your thoughts on this racial litmus test for treatment?
Well, it's been suffering. It's been bubbling for a number of years. It's now at a height. The idea of beating up on whitey is now chic. It's in vogue. And the real cowards here are white people. They won't stand up. I'm not saying we're being victimized every day. I am saying, and we have a list of it at Catholic League that we're putting out, all the celebrities who say things about white people which you could never, ever say about black people without being called a racist. And by the way, it's not just white people who have been told to go to the back of the line in New York. The Biden administration has been doing this summarily since he's in office 1 month. And they're making decisions on black farmers and black businessmen and others. White people go to the back of the line. Men in particular go to the back of the line. Now, this is racism, all right? And we should not buy into the critical race theory idea that if you're white, you have to be a racist, and if you're black, you can't be a racist. Racism is an idea, and it's putting in motion what prejudice is, which is discrimination, when you treat people differently on the basis of their color of their skin or their ethnicity. And it doesn't turn on ideology. They're trying to change it this other way. White people need to say, no, time out, folks. You are the racist who promote critical race theory. You're the ones who say that because I am a white guy, I am a racist. That in itself is racist. But until we stand up to these people, and a lot of them have PhD after their name. Most of the people I've known, or certainly a large number of them who have the PhD, I've worked with them a good part of my life, are indeed amongst the most intolerant in America.
Bill, as I mentioned earlier, January 6th marks the 20th anniversary of the Boston Globe's blockbuster report on the clergy sex abuse scandal in the Catholic Church. In your estimation, how much progress has been made by the Church since the Globe broke that abuse crisis story? I mean, you detail much of this in your book, The Truth About Clergy Sexual Abuse.
Yes, we're down to 5.9 substantiated accusations made against 50,000 members of the clergy per year. The figure back in the 70s was close to 7,000. I don't know of a single institution in the United States, secular or religious, which has a better record today and has had now for about 20 years. This is nothing new than the Catholic Church. Yet you have publications like the National Catholic Reporter and others. They don't want the scandal to go away. They want to make everybody believe it's still around. Oh, let's have another tribunal. Let's institute all kinds of data banks and whatnot. They have an interest. And by the way, isn't it interesting that these dissenting groups like the National Catholic Reporter and others, they help promote the scandal because they were the ones who challenged the Catholic Church's teachings on sexual ethics. They're the ones who said we were too restrictive. So we got rid of the restrictions, and guess what we got? A lot of sick men started acting out. And that's why you had the sexual revolution in the Catholic Church in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and where you don't have it today. No, the bishops have done a good job, finally, of cleaning up the mess, which I wish other institutions would follow their lead.
Bill, in 2002, you were at first very complimentary of the Globe's reporting. And you wrote of the Boston Globe, it was a rare event in 2002 to read a newspaper account of the scandal that was patently unfair, much less anti-Catholic. The Boston Globe, the Boston Herald, and the New York Times covered the story carefully and with professionalism, you wrote in 2002. When did you feel that the Boston Globe, along with other places in the media, started losing that objectivity?
It took several years, I think maybe at least 3 or 4 years, before I realized that what was going on now is they're sinking their teeth in. They don't want the scandal to go away because they're not reporting on what's going on in the public schools or in any other religion. And there's a reason for that. The left in this country, the ruling class, which is bought into the left, let's face it, they're now owned by the left, they reject the idea of sexual reticence. The idea of sexual restraint as a virtue is what we got from our Jewish brothers and sisters and is shared by others, not just Catholics and Jews around the world. Now, if your idea of liberty is that of license to do whatever you want to do, a riot of the id, so to speak, then the Catholic Church has to be the first institution that you're going to go after. So if the Catholic Church's moral authority has been weakened because of a scandal which it brought on itself to a large extent, then that's something that you need to celebrate and sink your teeth into it. You also have the lunatics on the right, too, by the way, who don't want the scandal to go away because they think we made too many reforms. The left says we didn't make enough reforms. So for both wings, bad news about the Catholic Church is good news. For practicing Catholics who love the Church, bad news about the Catholic Church is bad news. And we should condemn those on the far right and left, except that the ones on the left are the ones like the National Catholic Reporter who hold sway on college campuses that are Catholic. So they are a bigger threat than the nut jobs over at Church Militant.
Bill, why do you think Boston was the epicenter of this scandal? As we later found out, abuse occurred at an alarming rate all over the country. Why Boston?
Well, back in the 1970s and 80s, Boston was the hub, the epicenter of the sexual revolution for gays in particular. And within the Catholic Church, you had two organizations, Dignity, which was basically in rebellion against the Church's teachings on sexuality, take root there. And then you had other organizations which weren't Catholic, such as NAMBLA, which also took root in the late 70s in Boston. Paul Shanley, by the way, the homosexual priest, almost all of the molesters were homosexual. That's one thing we have to make very clear. They weren't pedophiles. That's another lie. Paul Shanley and others were celebrated in Boston by not only the Catholic left, but by the secular elites. Remember, Boston is a college town. They've got more college universities there than any place else in the United States. That makes them pretty much on the left to begin with. And they celebrated this. So it is striking to me how many people around the country, particularly in Boston, were horrified to learn that Paul Shanley and others were molesters, when in fact they cheerleaded them. They applauded them. And it was the elite. The people like Jerry Studs, the former congressman who was having sex with the mailboy. People like Barney Frank, who had prostitutes working out of his apartment. These guys were reelected all the time by the very open-minded people in Boston who didn't mind sexual promiscuity. They also loved the Kennedys, too, right? Or beginning with Joe Kennedy. So predatory behavior is not something that a large percentage of the people in this country, not just in Boston, have objected to. That's why they're so phony now when they say, oh, my God, listen, we had a scandal in the Catholic Church. It's a scandal which you helped to create by creating a milieu or an environment which allowed for a libertine understanding of sexuality, which is positively irresponsible sociologically.
Before I let you go, the connection between Shanley and the role that public dissent from church teaching played in this scandal and its aftermath, Bill, what's the connection there?
Listen, if you are a healthy man and you are hearing dissident discussions in your moral theology class, you may just dismiss it. But let's say you're a disturbed man, you have all kinds of issues, and you're hearing now the professor say, taking it from a book by Anthony Kosnick, called Human Sexuality, which was used in the seminaries, saying that every form of sexual expression is morally equal. And then you have on top of that people like Sister Janine Gramick, who's been condemned by the Vatican, but she's now back in good stead, I think, with some people in the Vatican, which is a subject I'm going to address next week. She praised Shanley several times after it was exposed that he himself was a predator. The National Catholic Reporter praised him 3 times, at least, after it was exposed that he was a predator. These are people who knew that Shanley was a sick man. It was a gay guy who said that the kid was the seducer. The kid was the seducer. That's what justified his predatory behavior. He had sex with men between the ages of 7 and 70. Again, they had to be men, otherwise he wouldn't have sex with them. But he was the hippie priest. He was the darling of Boston amongst Catholic left and amongst the dissidents and amongst the elite in Boston who were seculars too. So it's the left that created the scandal, and they're the ones now who are claiming, oh my God, it was the Catholic Church's teachings on moral theology that did it. No, if you followed your vow and you followed chastity and not your id, you wouldn't have done what you had done if you were a sick priest.
Bill Donohue, the new book, The Truth About Clergy Sexual Abuse, Clarifying the Facts and the Causes, published by Ignatius Press, is available at bookstores everywhere, including the EWTN catalog. Bill Donohue, thank you for being here.
Thank you.